Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Gardener. And thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's January 6th. Today we celebrate a botanist regarded as the father of paleobotany, the study of ancient plants that uses plant fossils. We'll also learn about the guitarist who went on a self-imposed 30-year exile, spending most of his time painting and gardening. We'll hear some thoughts on growing poisonous plants, and we grow that garden library today with one of my favorite garden poetry books. I always carry it with me. And then we'll wrap things up with a great article that helps us identify trees in winter. No small task, but great post. But first, I'd like to take a second to tell you about the Daily Gardener Friday newsletter. Every Friday, I send out the Daily Gardener newsletter, and it shows up as an email in your inbox. The newsletter is something I put together every week, and it has some very lovely content that I put together just for you. I'd like to start out the newsletter with some personal photos and updates, a little bit about what's going on around here in my own home and garden, with the hope that it inspires you and gets you thinking about your own space and garden in new and exciting ways. Then, I like to include some garden to-dos and creative resources, as well as little reminders for the month. And I'm a shopper, so I love sharing deals that I find with listeners of the show. And if you're a fan of the show, you'll also notice some favorite aspects from the podcast to help you get through the weekend. You'll see a little botanical history, some botanical poetry, of course, and a lovely list of all the featured books from the Grow That Garden library for the week. So handy. And I like to say, if you enjoy the podcast, you're going to love the newsletter. So head on over to thedailygardener.org and sign up for the free Friday newsletter today. Here's today's curated news. Today's news comes from Garden Design, and it was written by Anne Balow, and the title is called The Best Indoor Plants for Any Purpose. Well, I love reading articles about houseplants, especially this time of year, and I thought Anne did a wonderful job of listing gorgeous houseplant options for you to consider as you're thinking about maybe jazzing up your own houseplant collection. You know, houseplants have gained so much popularity. Even before the pandemic, they saw the trend going up for more houseplants. Millennials have contributed to that trend greatly. Now, what I love about Anne's post is that she spices things up a little bit with some houseplants that you maybe haven't considered before, like the baseball plant or even a Queen Victoria agave. That would be a marvelous addition to your houseplant collection. In any case, Garden Design always does such a wonderful job with their articles, and this piece is no exception. Now, if you'd like to read Anne's post for yourself, all you need to do is head on over to the Facebook group for the show and type in the word indoor, and Anne's post will pop up. And that makes it easy for you because you don't have to track it down for yourself. I already put it in the group. So the next time you're on Facebook, if you'd like to be in the group and be able to check these things out for yourself, plus you get to improve your Facebook feed because all of these wonderful things will start to pop up as things that you can see when you're checking on Facebook every day. All you need to do is search for Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend and then request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. Today is the birthday of the Bohemian theologian, mineralogist, entomologist, and botanist, Kaspar Maria von Sternberg, who was born on this day, January 6th, in 1761. Remembered as one of the most important natural scientists of the first half of the 19th century, Kaspar is regarded as the father of paleobotany. In 1818, Kaspar founded the National Museum in Prague. And today, the botanical genus Sternbergia honors Kaspar Sternberg. Sternbergia is a genus of plants in the Amaryllis family, and it comprises 8 recognized species of flowering bulbs, and they look a lot like crocus. The most popular Sternbergia is the lutea, a garden favorite described by Clusius back in 1601. Gardeners have known about it for a very long time. I was checking on the Sternbergia lutea, and I found it for sale in the White Flower Farm catalog, and they describe Sternbergia lutea this way. These lovely fall-flowering bulbs are crocus lookalikes with bright yellow blooms. The foliage appears with the yellow flowers in fall and persists until spring. Of course, that depends on where you're living, so you're going to want to check the zone. Now, the Sternbergia lutea bulbs multiply freely when they are happy, so look for places that are hot, sunny, and very well drained, because that's where you're going to want to plant these bulbs. Add a bit of lime to sweeten the soil, and planting will quickly fill out. And then it says, try pairing with one of the glorious blue flowers of fall. Great idea, like the salvia, for a heavenly contrast. And of course, as a member of the Amaryllis family, these bulbs are essentially pest-free, resistant to deer and voles. Now, that probably got your attention, so let me be the first person to congratulate you on your purchase of Sternbergia lutea. And today is the birthday of the guitarist, singer, songwriter, and co-founder of Pink Floyd, Syd Barrett, who was born on this day, January 6th, in 1946. After his immense success with Pink Floyd, Syd released 2 solo LPs and then disappeared into a self-imposed 30-year exile where he spent most of his time painting and gardening. Before his life with Pink Floyd, Syd attended the Camberwell Art School, and one of the pieces that he created was a beautiful watercolor, a delicate-looking still life of a dried flower bouquet. In 2006, Syd died of cancer at the age of 60. But before he died, Syd was a patient at Addenbrooke Hospital in Cambridge. In 2017, his friend, the sculptor Stephen Pyle, and a garden designer named Paul Harrington were busy planning to install the Syd Barrett Garden at Addenbrooke. Stephen's sculpture for the garden depicts Syd riding his bicycle, hands-free of course, with a guitar in one hand and artist brushes in the other. A beautiful tribute. In Unearthed Words, today's words are from one of my favorite gardeners and garden writers, Catherine White, who wrote Onward and Upward in the Garden. Here's today's excerpt. The year 1967 started with an all-out alert on the danger of poisonous plants. On January 6th, The Times published a story about a lecture on the subject by John Kingsbury, the author of a useful small book titled Deadly Harvest, a Guide to Common Poisonous Plants. At a very early age, I remember I was to recognize what plants are to be avoided completely. And at a very early age, I remember I was taught to recognize and stay away from deadly nightshade, poisonous ivy, and poison sumac. I was, just as early, taught the delights of chewing tender young checkerberry leaves and sassafras root. To me, it would be ridiculous, though, not to grow monkshood, foxglove, hellebore, larkspur, autumn crocus, poppies, lily of the valley, buttercups, and many other flowers now present in my borders, just because they have some poison in them. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, A Nature Poem for Every Night of the Year by Jane Hunter. This book came out just this past year in 2020, and like the companion book we talked about yesterday, A Nature Poem for Every Day of the Year, this book is one of my favorites. And in this book, Jane has gathered a beautiful and soothing collection of poetry that's inspired by nature, and it's perfect for bedtime reading. And here's what the publisher wrote about Jane's book. Now more than ever, we need something to comfort and distract us from the cares of everyday life. Keep this beautiful book by your bedside and enjoy a dreamy stroll through the natural world and its wonders every evening just before you go to sleep. All the great time-honored poets are here: William Wordsworth, John Keats, Emily Dickinson, Robert Bridges, along with some newer and lesser-known voices. These verses reflect and celebrate the changing seasons. Read Emily Bronte on bluebells in spring and Edward Thomas's evocative Addlestrop in summer. And then experience Golden Autumn with Hartley Coleridge and visit John Clare's Copse in Winter. Stunningly illustrated with seasonal scenes, this wonderful anthology will delight you for years to come. This book is 496 pages of soothing bedtime poetry inspired by the natural world. You can get a copy of A Nature Poem for Every Night of the Year by Jane Hunter and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $23. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day, January 6th, in 1996, that the News and Observer out of Raleigh, North Carolina, shared an article called The Naked Secrets of Trees in Winter by Lee Reich. Here's an excerpt. Trying to identify leafless trees during winter is a nice game to play alone or with a companion. Lee reminds us that trees like the paper birch are easy to spy because of their peeling white bark. And the catalpa tree is another easy one with its long brown pods. And the pin oak is fun to spy. The lower branches droop downward, the mid-level branches are horizontal, and the upper limbs turn upward. That said, most trees are challenging to identify this time of year. So Lee suggests using some expert books that guide you through tree identification steps. He shares 2 suggestions, and I've included them in the show notes for today's episode. And you'll be pleased to know that you can get both of them for around $5 a piece. I just ordered mine yesterday. So the first resource is called Fruit Key and Twig Key to Trees and Shrubs by William Harlow. And the second resource is called Winter Tree Finder by May Tilegard and Tom Watts. Now, one of the first steps in tree identification is to look at the bud's arrangement on new twigs. Are the buds opposite? Meaning, are they in pairs on opposite sides of each twig? Well, that narrows things down a bit because very few deciduous trees have opposite buds. So think about your ashes, dogwoods, maples and horse chestnut. They're the most common trees with opposite buds. Or you might ask, are the buds alternate, meaning that they're single and separated from each other along the length of the stem? Another question to ask is, what is the shape of the buds? Flowering dogwood buds look like little buttons capping short stalks. The pawpaw has velour-like brown buds. And finally, think about twig color and bark. They can both provide more clues. The box elder has purple twigs with a cloudy coating, and the American hornbeam has smooth blue-gray bark with ripples like mussel. Thorns can provide identification clues as well. Common trees with thorns are the black locust, the honey locust, the hawthorn, or the wild plum. And fruits and nuts provide another clue for tree identification. Finally, Lee writes, still at a loss for a tree's identity? Well, break off a twig and make a slanting cut to expose the pith. Chambered rather than continuous pith characterizes black walnuts and butternuts. Butternut trees have a chocolate brown pith, and black walnut trees have a toffee brown pith. And the taste of a twig sometimes is the giveaway. Black cherry will taste like bitter almond, and yellow and river birch will taste like wintergreen. And there is one more handy identifier. Deciduous trees are supposed to be leafless now, but a few leaves often hang on well into the winter. Now, those leaves will be dead dry, but they will often still be readable. Not only that, but those on oaks and beeches are so reluctant to fall that one can spot these species, even at some distance, by their skirt of dry leaves. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Wyoming, Minnesota with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, Kiana Rayleigh, Maddie Doyle, Natalie Decker, and Eric Begay. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Instagram, and listeners always have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. All the stories and books that are featured on the show can be found over at thedailygardener.org, thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. Last but not least, you can share your own gardener greetings on the show by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.